everybody, I'm KC and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about the Ducktales episode, The Last Crash of the Sunchaser. So right now, we're still in the sometimes feels like eternal realm of cartoon hiatus land, with the end very close in sight. So I think it's about time we finally talked about one of the biggest episodes of DuckTales 2017 so far. Lately, it seems like every animated show out there has this episode. The one that pushes characters harder than ever before, gets way heavier in terms of emotional stakes, and will fundamentally change the show going forward. But I think this is the quickest we've gotten an episode like this out of a show like DuckTales, being the penultimate episode of the first season. And while some serious stuff went down here, and I mean some serious stuff, let's talk about the episode as a whole, because there's a lot here that works, not just the big reveals. The whole gang, sans Donald, head off on one of their most exciting adventures yet, while the kids are taking some time to work on uncovering the mystery of what happened to Della. But all these plans come to a screeching halt, literally, when the Sunchaser crashes on a huge peak. And as they're trying to keep the plane balanced, limits are tested in the quest to find answers. Watching this again, it's kind of funny how overly innocent this episode starts. As the group is getting excited for their newest adventure, there's something exciting at their destination for everyone to get them to come along, but vague enough to realize in hindsight that they were never going to get there. Like seriously, watch this scene again. They're having way too much fun with this.
Monocro is said to be the final resting place of the elusive Maltese MacGuffin.
Also, there was this.
Experimental race cars! Lasers!
Aeroplanes?
Personally, I think we should applaud the creative team for holding back on making that joke for 22 episodes. I know I wouldn't have lasted that long. One of the things that makes this adventure a bit more special is that Beakley is coming along, giving us some of my favorite moments in the episode, reinforcing the long history between Scrooge and Beakley we learned about just a few episodes ago. I do get a kick out of the fact that Scrooge playfully refers to Beakley as 22, and how at first Beakley, being a stickler for safety precautions, is played for laughs, a trait we saw from her days as an agent, and then later turns to genuine concern for the kids and creates some conflict between her and Scrooge, who insists he can keep them all safe. It's a great clash of personality, especially since it emphasizes one of Scrooge's biggest character flaws, his pride. Not only did Scrooge ram this plane into a mountain in the first place because he thought for sure he could fly it on his own, but he makes attempt after attempt to get them back en route to their destination instead of giving up and getting off the plane. And we see that all this time, maybe it isn't just his own ego guiding his stubborn actions.
Nonsense. Nothing bad is going to happen to her. Her who?
We'll get to that. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, the kids are all in on the investigation of what happened to Della and decide to work together to solve the mystery once and for all. The latest clue being an old shredded photo from around the time she disappeared. Why the McDuck Archives keep shredded documents from over 10 years ago is anyone's guess. Kinda defeats the purpose of shredding, but it's probably best not to question a facility run by this lady. But because of the crash and the fact that the plane keeps tilting with every movement, the last piece they need starts floating all over the plane. So Dewey keeps trying to get the piece back without Scrooge noticing, which gets difficult when, again, every single step shifts the environment around them. This is one of the most gripping episodes yet. Even if there isn't a monster of the week or a treasure to be found, with the tension between the characters and the situation constantly getting worse, with the environment constantly shifting and getting more dangerous, it keeps you on the edge of your seat as any small action could send them plummeting, and there's quite a few close calls throughout the episode. Not to mention that there's the suspense of losing the answer to one of the biggest questions in the series. When I covered the series as a whole, I speculated just how well this show would be able to manage laying out more than one ongoing storyline, and with the mystery of what happened to Della Duck, it's been built up very well. The dedicated episodes were spaced out well, and each time it was mentioned, something was accomplished. From getting rid of red herrings to the emotional confrontation that got Huey and Louie involved in the previous episode, and this is no different, because most of us are in Dewey's position, being so close to answers that you feel the frustration each time that piece slips away. Because we didn't know just how ready the show was to give us answers, there was genuine concern here. Something else I admire about this episode is the fact that they managed to have fun with that frustration. From the other kids getting annoyed at Dewey trying to savor the moment each time they come close, to the tiptoeing slow motion chase between Dewey and Scrooge to keep the plane steady, to Launchpad's choice of in-flight entertainment. I also want to point out some of the made-up end credit names here. I always love this kind of attention to detail, and reading the screenshots of this scene from the Comic-Con preview got a good laugh out of me. Both Scrooge and Dewey come to a head when Dewey runs out onto the wing of the plane to get the final piece. peace. Watching Dewey be so determined to get answers that he's willing to do this despite his brother's objections is, in a way, tough to watch. Dewey has no question been the most featured character up to this point. In fact, it was becoming a running joke in the fanbase that Dewey managed to be in every single episode. Even in episodes where he wasn't the focus, even in episodes without Scrooge or the rest of his brothers, even in episodes where he didn't have any lines, Dewey would still pop up to check off the box. So it makes sense for one of the most important climaxes in the show so far to focus on these two, especially since the pilot was about building the bond between them. Scrooge finally admits that despite what he's been insisting, he can't keep them safe in the situation no matter how much he tries to, and Dewey finally says what he's been wanting to since he saw that painting in the first episode.
Tell me about the Spear of Selene.
And with that, we finally find out. Many fans speculate that the Spear of Selene was actually a rocket. There's even apparently a European Scrooge McDuck comic depicting Della lost in space. Well, Ducktales 2017 continues to draw from the source material's history because the fans were right. Turns out Della wanted to explore the stars, believing she had been on every adventure she could have on Earth. So Scrooge built her a rocket she had been planning and didn't tell anyone. But Della found out, took the rocket, and got lost in some kind of cosmic storm, and hasn't been heard from since. Scrooge and Donald didn't speak again until the series began. It's a sad but pretty satisfying explanation. I know it can disappoint people when the most popular theory turns out to be right, but as I've said, I'd rather have something well foreshadowed and plausible rather than something shocking that makes no sense when you give it a second thought. And I wish I could say that was it, but
Cool. So you're the reason our mom is gone.
Oh, now we're getting into the heavy stuff.
Built her a crazy dangerous super rocket.
And you encouraged her to keep flying through a cosmic storm?
Well, like I said, most anime shows tend to have an episode like this. So it's time for the latest round of the Cartoon Blame Game. You chose sides in the last quarter of Gravity Falls, you persecuted literally everybody's feelings and actions in Steven Universe, and now it's time to figure out who's to blame for everything in the disappearance of Della Duck. And the answer is... no one. Look, I'm not going to try to take sides here. I have seen arguments from all sides over who's to blame for what. But here's the thing. The thing about all these situations you see lately in cartoons with ongoing stories. The effects are deeply personal. Therefore, the actions are flawed. Therefore, it's more realistic. It's easy to look at a narrative, especially in animation, and try to point at a single character as a catalyst for all of the actions that led to this tragedy. But it doesn't work that way. There's no one person to blame here. This was a domino effect of bad decisions. No, Scrooge shouldn't have built the rocket, but he had no intention of Della taking it before the kids were born, given the fact that he didn't tell anyone about it. And he's not to be blamed for what Della did. No, Della shouldn't have taken the rocket on a joyride when she had 3 children on the way, but we still don't know why she did it in the first place. Sure, she could have just been going on a test ride like Scrooge said, but that's just it. We only know the story from Scrooge's perspective. There could easily be more here that we don't know, so as far as Della is concerned, for now, I reserve judgment. And no, the kids shouldn't have been that hard on Scrooge for something he didn't predict, but here's the thing that I feel like should be kept in mind more often in shows like this. They're kids. They are children, at best preteens. Throughout this whole season and pretty much their whole lives, they've been wondering why their mother isn't around anymore, and hasn't been for their whole lives. So of course they're going to blame Scrooge as soon as they heard he built the rocket. They're projecting. They wanted an answer. They wanted a reason for why their mother is gone, and more importantly, they now have someone to point at and say, this is your fault. Is that fair or justified behavior? No, but that's what they'll have to come to terms with going into the finale. You kind of need to have character conflict in order to have character development. For now, they are so upset with Scrooge that when they get back home, they just want to get back to the houseboat and go back to their boring lives away from Scrooge. And Scrooge lashes out at everyone when they gang up on him for this mistake, that he gets fed up with everyone, shuts them all out, and lets everyone around him leave. Even Duckworth. Everyone has this overwhelming sense of betrayal by Scrooge's words, but again, it's not as simple as that. Just because Scrooge played a part in what happened to his niece, it doesn't make that loss any less valid. If anything, it makes it so much worse. The episode ends with a heart-wrenching montage of his attempts to bring Della back. He sent up dozens of ships and spent so much of his fortune on it, he had to be physically torn away from the project by his investors and lost most of what was in his money bin, which I actually saw people commenting about how much less there was in there compared to the original show back when the reboot premiered, so that is some amazing foreshadowing. Also, can we stop to appreciate David Tennant's voice work here?
I hope you're happy. I am. I suppose in the end, they break my heart.
It's a painful ending, to say the least, that leaves quite a bit to be resolved for the season finale, but we'll get to that next time. For now, overall, the last crash of the Sunchaser is... oh, jeez. The first 2/3 are both typical Ducktales and nothing like any other episode, managing to be suspenseful and funny, but also has the characters stuck in one place that's just as life-threatening as any adventure in the most tense and personal situation they've ever been in. And I have to comment on the animation because it is so striking here, setting the atmosphere excellently in a single setting, especially with the colors, and the expressions are some of the best in the series so far. Specifically, during Dewey and Scrooge's confrontation on the wing, Dewey's obsessive, determined look, the realization and heartbreak on his face when he finally sees the picture, and Scrooge's quiet resignation when he sees what Dewey's been after and agrees to tell him. It's one of many powerful moments in the episode, pushing the characters we love to their limit with some tough revelations that none of them process in quite the right way. But that's what makes it so engaging, because it's so painfully human. Yes, the show about anthropomorphic ducks is painfully human. Welcome to Disney, folks. And I could go on about that conflict, but I think that's best saved for the resolution in the big season finale. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.